Anyway, I want Madam Mayor, we are recording and live on YouTube. You can begin whenever you wish.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Welcome, everyone, to our regular council meeting. Before we begin, of course, remind you that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the Township's YouTube channel. And of course, there are participants joining us via Zoom as well as from the council chambers. Council, of course, as usual, please raise your hand if you want to speak on a matter and I will call on you. We'll start with calling the roll. Of course, we have Deputy Mayor Nelson.
Present.
Councillor Watt.
Present.
Councillor Vervoort.
Present.
Councillor Johnston.
Present.
Hello, and of course myself, Mayor Heather Watson, and on staff side, we have our clerk, Martina Chait-Hartwig.
Good afternoon.
CAO, Alana Arthurs. Interim Treasurer, Paul Creamer. Our planner, Christina Coulter.
Present.
And CBO, Don Hallinan. I didn't see that, but I'm assuming he's there.
He'll be with us in a moment.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. With Councillor Watt.
Gijo at the end, though. Maybe you can't see him on your screen.
Oh, yes, of course. We have Gijo Joshi at the end. Hello. So we do have quorum of council in attendance, so I will call the meeting to order, beginning with the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of Mishi-Sagi and Ishibeg. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations, and may we honor those teachings. And we will pause for a moment of silent reflection and also just take a moment for to reflect on former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, whose funeral is this Saturday in Ottawa. We'll just pause for a moment of silence, please. Okay. So council, the agenda was of course distributed last week, and I'm sure you've all had an opportunity to review it. I just am looking for any expression of our declaration of pecuniary interest. Councillor Vervoort.
Mayor Watson, item 7.1 on the agenda regarding severance file B16-24. Have a conflict on that.
Okay, so what we'll do then is separate those two out so that you can participate in any discussions or approval on B96-23, and then we can move on to 16-24. Thank you. Are there any other disclosures? So seeing nothing else, then could I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Watt, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nelson. All in favor? And that motion carries. On to item 6, we have 2 sets of minutes before you today. Regular council meeting minutes of March 5th, as well as our special council meeting minutes of March 11th. Could I get a motion to approve and receive these? Deputy Mayor Nelson. Seconded. Councillor Johnston, thank you. All in favor? And that motion carries. Okay, so on to item 7. So, of course, recognizing Councillor Vervoort's disclosure on 16-24, let's just address B96-23, and we'll look for a motion to receive and approve that on consent. Deputy Mayor Nelson, Councillor Johnston, seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? And that motion carries. And then we'll on to item B-16-24. Councillor Vervoort, you're fine. Just recuse yourself from voting. You don't need to leave. Just a motion to receive those. Deputy Mayor Nelson, seconded by Councillor Johnston. All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a number of delegations this evening before us. So, of course, just a reminder, these delegations, we'll just go through them in order. We've got Joanna Parks with Baker Tilly. Madam Clerk, I think Ms. Parks is in the chambers. Yes, so there you go. There you are.
Here I am.
Welcome. I will put the floor over to you.
Maybe just do an introduction.
Oh, of course.
Joanna Park is here from Baker Tilly today to present our 2021 financial statements. Council is well aware of the challenges our finance department and organization has faced over the last little while, but I think we're happy to say that we're in a position now to be finally staying on top of things and also catching up on our audits and statements and processes and everything in between. I think when I look at the audit, I've worked with some people over time who kind of fear the process and fear the auditors coming, big bad mean auditors, but we have a small team, and I'm always actually quite thankful and appreciate working with the team at Baker Tilly. We don't always have the opportunity to have multiple sets of eyes on the work that we're doing, so it is actually quite nice to have another set of eyes to review everything and make sure that we're doing it right, because errors do happen. So thinking back to 2021 does kind of feel like a lifetime ago when you think about what life was like with social distancing and lockdowns, which led to facility closures. Joanna's going to walk through the numbers in detail, but we did end up with a surplus of just over 700,000. Ultimately, in kind of short detail, that's from some salary gapping, a couple $100,000, some savings on some capital projects. I think we actually were quite conservative in some of our budgeting for facility rentals. It ended up being a little bit better year than what we expected. And then just some general savings from not spending as much in a COVID timeframe. So with that, I will hand it over to Joanna, and she's going to walk us through our 2021 financials. I think we'll have a presentation to get up on the screen.
Thank you for that, Paul. Over to you, Joanna.
Perfect, thank you. Can you hear me okay, Madam Mayor?
I certainly, yes, I can.
Okay, I've never been told I'm quiet, but I wasn't sure how it would go with the microphone there. And if anyone else can't hear me, let me know. I apologize for all the people in the audience here, because I'm sure you didn't come to hear me speak, but I'll get through this. So we do have the presentation here in your packages, Council, and the agenda packages. There was a letter from us as well as the financial statements. This presentation is a summary of both of those items, and but by all means, at the end of the presentation, if you have any questions about the other two documents, I'm happy to address those. We start with the most important. I don't know who's controlling that. Okay, perfect. Thanks much. Yeah, no worries. So we start with the auditor's report. This is really what you're asking for. We just duplicate the second paragraph of the auditor's report, which is the opinion paragraph. And it says, in our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the township at December 31st, 2021. And they are in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So a few things there. They are consolidated financial statements. These aren't just the results of 2020 of the township. They are also the results of the library as well. They're consolidated there. And the other thing is the Canadian public sector accounting standards. That's what you as a municipality have to follow by. So that is a clean auditor's opinion, which is what you would expect to see. It's our requirement on the next slide to tell you what we do as part of our audit, and it hasn't changed from year to year. We review council minutes, closed and open sessions to ensure that anything that is relevant to the financial statements right up until today's meeting is reflected in there. Obviously, there's probably not a lot happening in March of 2024 that's going to impact the December 31st, 2021 statements, but if there was, then we would have to make sure that, and that would be any big commitments or any legal lawsuits that would actually have to be disclosed in the statements too. And I've been in contact with Paul and Alana during the audit just to make sure that there isn't anything like that. We do lots of testing. Paul and Gijo can tell you we're in here testing lots of different things. We do sampling, we do analytical review, we look at management's estimates to make sure they're reasonable, and we look at your various systems, the money coming in, the money coming out, and the adjusting journal entries. On the next slide, just the last matter is to let council be aware of the audit is complete. Once council approves it tonight, we've got all our legal letters in, we'll have the final signatures, and then we'll be able to release them. And I know that's very important from where we are in the cycle here. The FIR, we're just waiting on a little bit of information. We'll get that submitted as well too and be done finally with 2021, a year that probably none of us want to relive again anyway, regardless of the audit or not. We had no significant difficulties encountered on what we audited. We didn't change our audit plan on what we were going to audit. Obviously, we know here that there was time delays due to just getting the audit information. And, but we do want to note the excellent cooperation from management and staff. It's hard to get this far behind and then try to catch up. So we really appreciate all the cooperation we got. We did have different audit differences, which are enclosed in your letter in the packages. And the reason we didn't necessarily correct those as we went through is your team is making changes as they go through. So there were some things that it didn't make sense to do a journal entry and then have to reverse it in the following year when we come in soon to do the 2022 audit. So they've been left as uncorrected misstatements, but they don't impact our audit opinion. We're fine with that. So no impact on the audit. And the only amounts of $46,000, which in the general scheme of things is not very significant to your overall financial statements. Then we get into the numbers. So what we've done is we've taken kind of the different segments of your audit statements and broken it down here and shown kind of a 5-year trend, just so you can kind of see that what's been going on over the last 5 years and see the trends there. In your financial assets, your biggest number there being your cash at almost $4.5 million, a nice increase with that increase in the surplus that Paul has already talked about. You do have almost $4 million in investments at the end of 2021. A lot of that in GICs, as well as you do have about $500,000 in the bond fund with in bonds in the one fund. Your accounts receivable, that's just going to change. That's amounts owing to you. A lot of grants, or whether it be arena receivables, that kind of thing, $420,000. Your taxes receivable, this is where you guys definitely excel at. The ministry has a guideline of your taxes receivable to your total assessment should be under 10%. And in 2021, you're at 4.8%. So you're half of that guideline, which is great. I can't say that for all my clients, that's for sure. So that is great. And I hope staff keep up the efforts on whatever they're doing to keep that. And then you do have a little bit of land held for sale, $83,000, to give you total financial assets about $9.6 million. And the next slide, we just show kind of the trend over that 5-year period. And you can see the green one is your cash, and it's been going up over the years, with the gray being your investments as well. So significant amount of funds there in cash and investments. We look at your financial liabilities, the amounts owing at the end of December. Your accounts payable, that's just timing amounts that are owing at the end of December relating to the 2021 year, $1.1 million. Your deferred revenue obligatory reserve funds, $912,000. That's the $912,000 you had on hand at the end of December 2021 that could be used in the future, and most of that's gas tax funding, $765,000. And then you have development charges of $80,000 and parkland of $65,000. To note, in 2020, you actually had some negative development charges, so that you're now in a positive, and it's not uncommon to have negative, where you've just kind of pre-spent the money before you got it, but that wasn't the case at the end of 2021. Deferred revenue is just other revenue that you've received that you haven't spent and you can use for future periods. Half of that $26,000 almost is Main Street revitalization funding that you had at the end that was going to be spent in 2022. And then the last two items on that page, your landfill closure and post-closure, as well as your employee future benefit, those are your biggest estimates on the financial statement. So the landfill closure, post-closure is actually all closure, and that's for remaining monitoring of your 3 closed sites, until you're done and the MOE basically signs off on them. And then your employee future benefits is an estimate of how much it's going to cost for your current employees when they retire for the benefits that you get upon retirement. And the next slide just again shows the trends there. And you can see the accounts payable is usually your biggest liability. And again, that's just timing of when invoices are due. And the red one being your deferred revenue, your obligatory reserve funds. And then we look at your non-financial assets. And the biggest one there, the $27.3 million, that's the tangible capital asset. So that's the historical cost of all your assets minus the accumulated depreciations, because you're expensing them over their useful life. So that's the historical cost of that. That doesn't have any bearing on how much, say, this building is worth now compared to how much it was when you built it. It's the historical cost, and that's just the accounting policy that's required. It is an increase there because your additions this year were more than the amortization. So when you take your net financial assets plus the non-financial assets, including inventories and materials and supplies, a lot of that's gravel, you get your accumulated surplus of $34.8 million, and we're gonna see what that is, and that it's not all the money that council can put in your next budgets. The next statement is just the consolidated statement of operations. So this is a snapshot of your total revenues and expenses, and then you can see the budget, the actual, and the 2020 actual too. The reason we include this slide is to show we know that council didn't budget for a $586,000 surplus like it shows on this slide. And it's the differences between how council budgets and how the statements are required to be shown with public sector accounting board standards. So the differences are the amortization and the capital. When you budget, you include your capital as an expense because that's how you have to raise the taxation. But when we do the financial statements, it's not an expense. So it's really just showing that reconciliation down to that zero line, which is exactly how you budgeted, and that you had no operating surplus or deficit at the end of 2021 or 2020. So it's really just showing what the differences are there. And the following slide just shows the relationship between your accumulated surplus and how much of that is, you can skip that. Oh, are you frozen?
It might be, just give me 1 second, please.
No worries.
Apologies.
There we go. So the right hand or the orange slide is the accumulated surplus, and then the blue bar, is the net book value of capital assets. So this is showing that you've got a nice gap there. Some municipalities will have all of their accumulated surplus already invested in capital assets and more. So you've got a nice gap there, and you've been consistent like that over the last about 5 years, and we'll see the breakdown. And then just looking at the next slide with the relationship again, seeing the total revenue with the green, the total expenses with the red, and how much annual surplus, and that's PSAP surplus that you have each year. And again, the idea just being to see that it's pretty consistent year over year. Then we look at the total revenues. Your total budget was just under $8.2 million. The actual was just under $8.7 million. Obviously, a little bit of change here and there. Your property taxation is your biggest revenue at just under $5.8 million. Then user charges, that was the big story in 2021 for you. You budgeted $719,000 and the actual user charges were $1.2 million. You were a little under budgeting in your rec facilities, understanding when you budgeted, it would make sense. So you were about $115,000 over budget in your rec facility revenue. And the big one there too was building permits. You were $400,000 over budget in your building permits in 2021. So that accounted for that big increase there you see in the user charges line. You had some revenue or some grants from the government of Canada as well as the province, obviously, OMPF, Safe Restart, all the lovely COVID funding back then, as well as some roads capital funding. The other significant amounts on there are just out of the ordinary. You had some donations for fire at the time and other revenue. You had an FCM asset management grant. And then the developer contributions earned as well as the federal gas tax revenue earned, the last two lines there, that's the amount you actually spent, not the amount you received. And then the next slide just shows the pie chart of where you're getting your revenue from. 66.4% from property taxation and 14.1% from user charges. So a good portion of that pie being from your ratepayers, essentially. And then the next slide is your expenses. We're required to show expenses two ways. This is the first way. The totals are obviously the same in both ways, just showing the different departments. So in total, your budget was about $7.6 million. You came in about $7.4 million. General government was under budget. There was some salaries, some consulting fees, training, basically things that just didn't happen because of 2021. Your protection services was over budget, and that's, you had a special levy from the Conservation Authority in 2021, I think, for the dam, about $145,000. So that's really accounting for that increase over budget there. Transportation services up over budget, just regular. There was nothing specific in there. Your environmental services are under budget, and that's because of the decrease in the landfill liability. It comes through as a negative expense there, and that's the only reason. Everything else was very comparable year over year. And then your recreation and cultural services, as expected, is under budget. They just weren't used as much as one had hoped in 2021. And your planning and development, you had budgeted to have a planner in 2021 at the time in the budget. That's why it's a lot higher than actual. And again, you see the pie chart of where the expenses are, and as expected for your type of municipality, almost 36% of your expenses are transportation, almost 32 for protection, and general government, about 16.7. And then the expenses kind of more by type of expense. Again, the totals are the same, but we can see the salary benefits were under budget. I just spoke about the plan to have a planner. And then materials are kind of the catch-all, if you will, contracted services. And then external transfers being over budget, again, that's where the amount for the Conservation Authority came in. And looking at the chart there, about 32.7% salary and benefits, which is very comparable. We do this chart for all our municipalities, varying from very, very small to cities and large counties. And it's usually right in the area, 30 to 34% is salary and benefits is where the percentage is. So right in there. Contracted services, 22%, and then materials. And then we talked about your accumulated surplus of $34.9 million. And that, you know, a good portion of that is already invested in capital assets at $27.3 million. That's the amount of the net book value of your capital assets that we saw on one of the first slides. And then you do have amounts, inventory held for resale, and then unfunded employee benefits as well as landfill. You're not going to fund those until you're actually paying the expenses, which is why they kind of get deducted there. And then you have no operating surplus or deficit. That amount that Paul mentioned, the $700,000, that was transferred into reserves, which you see in the bottom portion. So you've got almost $7.8 million in reserves and reserve funds at the end of the year, which is why you have such a healthy cash and investment balance. You've got this amount set aside for specific purposes. And before council asks me, is this enough reserves and reserve funds, especially in, you know, thinking about 2021, this is really where the asset management plan comes in. You really need to look at what your future needs are over the next, you know, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and make sure that you're putting enough aside. So it's really hard. The province sometimes tries to compare one municipality to another, especially when it comes to reserves and reserve fund balances. But it's hard to say, it all depends on your capital assets and the need for those in the future. So you really need to kind of look, you know, within and just see if you have enough there. If anyone's lived in a condominium, they are required to do that every 3 years. It's really just the same thing, is just trying to make sure that you're going to have the funds when all of a sudden you need a new bridge, or especially if you can't count on funding coming in. And the next slide just shows that trend of the reserves and reserve funds over the last 5 years. And you can see that you have been putting amounts and making efforts to put amounts into the reserves. And then we talked about capital asset additions. You had significant amount, over $2 million in capital asset additions. About half of that is in roads and bridges, and then vehicles and machinery equipment. There was some fire equipment, a pumper, some plow equipment, all purchased in 2021. And then looking at your capital asset additions versus the amortization. So the additions are the orange on the right-hand side. And this is where it's important, just every 5 years, kind of look at this and make sure that you're replacing your assets at a greater rate than the amortization. The amortization is based on the historical cost of the asset. So you want to make sure that you're replacing them at a greater rate, just to at least keep up with inflation, if not to ideally get ahead of it. And then looking at the average useful life remaining in the assets, and no surprise, and the way it should be is the one with the least amount remaining is your computers and computer software, and that makes sense because they have the shorter lifespan compared to your other assets. And this is really just an average of all the assets, so it's not to say that, if you have something at 67% that you're in, necessarily in good status. It's more just an overall average. And the last slide just shows kind of the trend of your net financial assets. So that's your financial assets minus your total liabilities, and you're on a nice trend up there. And that's just, you have no debt, you have a significant amount in your cash and investments at the moment. So right now you're on the nice trend. It's not to say if you went down, that would necessarily be bad. It is definitely very healthy. And that is my end of my presentation. I'm happy to address any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. I will now turn it over to council. Any questions from council? Councilor Brevoort.
Mayor Watson, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Definitely in-depth and thorough, and everything I expected of a fellow accountant, so thank you. You had mentioned that the municipality compares pretty well with other municipalities in terms of expenses, like 30 to 34% for salaries. I'm just wondering what we're like on revenues. Are we heavily weighted towards one thing more than other municipalities versus like taxes versus user charges?
When I look at the percentages for in a year where there's not a lot of government grants and that kind of stuff, it's very similar. Where I would say about 75% generally being from property taxation and user charges. Obviously there's going to be years in municipalities where all of a sudden there's a big capital grant and stuff, and that's going to skew it. But that is pretty common. It would be about that percentage.
Councilor Watt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks very much, Joanna. Excellent as always, and it's always nice to hear the good compliments of how our staff worked with you, stuff like that. So that's very, very much appreciated, and with your staff working with ours, the same. Just a quick question, maybe I'm not quite on here. The net financial assets right at the end that you had there, 5-year trend, and you mentioned the fact that we have no debt, but we are looking at a substantial project coming like that. Do you see any problem? Because that's going to take it the other way, so like that.
Exactly.
How are we looking at that for where we're sitting right now, or is that something you can answer?
Through you, Mayor, sorry. That's kind of why I didn't know you were looking at debt, but that's why I kind of made that comment, because I don't want it to drop and then to think, oh no, like now we're in a bad position. You're still above board, and even there's a lot of places that have negative there too. Right. And as long as you're kind of watching your cash flow projections and making sure that you have the funds to cover it, sometimes you need debt to get capital in, right? Especially when there's not a lot of funding around. You don't have a lot of choice. But so yeah, no, I would say you're kind of bordering on, it's pretty high. But again, it depends on what your plans are. So yeah, I would not be alarmed.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor Nelson.
Through you, Mayor Watson. Thanks a lot for your presentation. I know how much work goes into it, and it's a lot of work and a lot of effort from our staff and from you coming in. So I appreciate that very much. So thank you for your presentation, and it looks like we're in nice financial shape.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Councilor Johnson.
I just got one comment. Now we're done this 2021.
Yes.
So I guess tomorrow we'll be starting 2022.
I would love to soon. I think if we don't have it scheduled, we will soon. We're just in following.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we do have it scheduled for them to be back April 22nd. We'll restart at 2022. We've been working on it, but formally, closing 2021 and doing official 2022 entries. We started last week. So we're on.
Great. Thank you for that update. Any other questions or comments from council? Seeing nothing, then again, I echo council's comments. Thank you very much for your work on this, and to staff for their work on this. Council, we're just looking for a motion now to receive the presentation and approve the signing of the required documents. Councillor Vervoort? And that's seconded by Councillor Johnston. Any discussion to the motion? All in favor? And that motion carries. Again, thank you very much, Joanna.
Thank you.
Okay, on to our next presentation. We have Lynn Vanderloop from Quarry Consulting up to speak about our strategic plan presentation.
Thank you.
One moment, Madam Clerk.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. We've just had some more people join us, so I just want to let them have a moment to settle in before we get started.
Okay, wonderful.
In the chambers is full tonight, so.
Okay, and I will just ask and remind the chambers, because of the OWL camera system that we have, everything's been great so far, but to try and keep noise in the chambers at a minimum, so that the cameras are focusing on the folks as opposed to on the gallery, unless you want the cameras on you. So it looks like everybody is settled now. So Lynn, over to you. Unless, are we prefacing this with a report from staff, or just going straight into the presentation?
For you, Madam Mayor, just through the presentation.
Wonderful. All right. All right, the floor is yours, Lynn.
Thank you. Martina, do you have the presentation?
I do indeed. It's just coming up in one moment.
Well, while we're getting going, good afternoon, Mayor Watson, councillors, township staff. We are very pleased to be nearing the end of the strategic planning process with your township this evening. And today we're requesting council endorsement of the draft strategic plan. If we go to the next chart, I just wanted to recap the work completed to date. So a lot of work went into this plan, including members from your community and your staff. So we kicked off the strategic planning process at a council meeting back in September. Funny enough, it was September 19th, exactly 6 months ago today, when we kicked this process off. We then reviewed all the background materials, the previous plan, the previous SWOT analysis. We summarized all the findings, and we met with your management team to understand some of your now current issues, current challenges, and opportunities. And we also identified potential stakeholders within your community who would want to engage. Moving into November, we hosted both virtual and in-person engagement sessions with your community members. And if you recall, we brought the summary of those discussions to the afternoon of the session, November 28th, where we met with council and your extended management team to discuss and rank and tease out the strategic priorities heard from across the community. And then in the new year, so we took all that away and we started to slowly draft the strategic plan. And in the new year, we kind of met again with your management team to build out objectives and some concrete actions against each of the strategic priorities. Obviously, considering also what is manageable and doable within the next few years. And then before we got into February, we started finalizing the strategic plan. And I shared a preview of that with those community members who we participated, who we reached out to in sessions. The plan was also posted to your website, and there was a short survey that was also posted to the website. There was just a little recap about the survey. There was 46 community members who responded. There was 19 complete surveys, 27 not so complete, but regardless, we were able to gain good validation. I think that we were, from the vast majority of survey respondents, agreed with the draft plan. There was very positive views of the core values and the strategic pillars outlined in the plan. There was one question asked of people's opinion on sort of if there was a strong opinion one way or the other on having one core purpose statement or one core vision statement versus a separated out vision and mission statement. And that was really the only question where it was kind of split fairly evenly at 50-50. So We are hoping to put it to council this evening to ask for council to weigh in and discuss and ultimately make a decision. And we'll get to that. I'm going to step through the plan with each of you. But ultimately today, here we are in March, we are presenting your draft strategic plan for council endorsement and ultimate approval. So if we go to the next chart, please. Thank you. So I trust you've had a chance to look at the draft plan. If you've reviewed it, I will walk through it as I mentioned, and its components. So if we just go to the next chart. Thank you. So new to this year's plan, we've included a land acknowledgement as well as an introduction. The land acknowledgement, we're starting to see in formal documents, not every document, but formal documents, we're starting to see townships include a land acknowledgement in addition to public forums. And we've included an introduction. It's a nice snapshot of who you are as a community for visitors and new community members and business owners. And if we go to the next chart, this is where I wanted to just take a pause and maybe I can hand it back over to the chair in just a moment, but we've presented two options. So the first option is kind of a all-encompassing core purpose statement that includes your vision and mission statement. And then the more traditional, which is what you had in your last plan, separated out vision and mission statement. And if you read them, they're very similar. There's no right or wrong answer. Just to remind you, a vision statement is to be, aspirational, where you want to be forward looking. And your mission statement is, your purpose, why you exist, where you are today, how you would describe yourself. So like I said, there's no right or wrong answer, but I thought I would just pause here, maybe hand it back to the chair to see if there's discussion and a strong opinion one way or another.
Certainly, thank you. Council, any thoughts on what's before you today? And Madam Clerk, because of the screen sharing, I can't see the whole bench, so I'll ask you to call out any member of council whose hands up. Maybe Councillor Johnston's hands up, or no?
Not at the moment. Does
Okay.
any council member have a comment or opinion? Councillor Johnson.
To the chair, I like the option one. It puts it all together, and I don't know that we need to break it up with a vision and mission. So I just like the core purpose with the option one.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else on council care to comment or questions on that? And Lynn, if I can just circle back, you said it was about split in the community input that we received?
Yeah, it was about 50-50. I have to go back and look at the results, but it was split. And that's why when I brought it back to management, we thought, you know what, I can make the decision, but I think based on preference and council, I thought it would be good for you to discuss and just make a final decision. Otherwise, I'm happy to. And if you read through them, I think they are quite similar. Mm-hmm. And as I said, there's no right or wrong answer. I just wanted to provide the option and just final decision to you.
Understood. Thank you. If there's nobody else on council who wants to weigh in on this at this moment, what I would suggest, because I know we've got some registered delegates as well who want to speak to the strategic plan. So I think what we'll do regardless is after your presentation, we won't be looking to adopt it immediately. We'll be letting those speakers take the floor. So before we settle on option one or two, perhaps we should hear from those members of the public to help inform our decisions as well in the event that they have something specific to speak. I think that would probably be most respectful of the speakers who have registered to speak with us this evening. So if council has any other comments on the options or preferences, great. If not, then we can go on with your presentation then. Madam Clerk, I'm assuming nobody else has their hand up. I can't see anyone's.
No one.
We're good.
None of the council members have their hands up, so you can continue.
All right, thank you. So please go on, Lynn.
Okay, thank you very much. So if we go to the next chart. Thank you, Martina. So while we were developing the strategic plan, and discussion with your community, there was some guiding principles that kind of surfaced, and rather than kind of put them as a strategic pillar that we would put actions against, we felt it was important to kind of have these guiding principles laid out as kind of a touchstone as you make decisions as a town. So the 4 here are fiscal responsibility, service excellence, transparency, and the environment. And if we go to the next chart, the 3 strategic pillars. So if you recall, very similar to what we were discussing, and we continue to tease them out further with objectives against each. But back in November, we were kind of landing on these 3. So service modernization and innovation, business attraction, expansion, and retention, and infrastructure renewal. And if we move to the next chart, then the heavy lifting and the rolling up our sleeves was really determining what are the objectives against each of these strategic pillars. And in and behind each of these objectives that you see here on the page there are actions against each of these. So there is an action plan that is attached to this strategic plan, and it's for the township to put into action against each of these objectives. So for service modernization and innovation, 1, continue to modernize and improve services, processes, and outcomes for our community. 2, update our website with a cleaner interface and easier access to information. 3, maintain a document management and retention system with a focus on public accessibility. And 4, provide online community engagement where residents can sign up to receive information. So if we look at strategic pillar number 2 on the next page, there are 4 objectives again, and once again, there are actions against each of these objectives, but the 4 objectives are promote our township through storytelling about who we are, what we do, and our brand identity. 2, improve our community signage throughout the township, making it easier for residents and visitors to navigate our spaces. 3, prepare for the completion of our comprehensive zoning bylaw to ensure that land is properly zoned for commercial and industrial development. And 4, provide incentives to new and growing businesses while ensuring existing businesses have opportunities to flourish. And then finally, strategic pillar 3 is around infrastructure renewal. And there were 3 objectives. So prioritize roads where surface treatments are obtainable and upgrade roads based on regular needs assessments. 2, to put an actionable and measurable plan in place to replace or repair aging infrastructure of all municipal facilities. And 3, make asset management a core focus of the budget process to ensure funds are being dedicated to improvement and maintenance of infrastructure. And then finally, the strategic plan closes out with a commitment to deliver. So it thanks the community for participating in the plan. And it's really the commitment to deliver on the strategic pillars, keeping the core values in focus. So the next chart was really sort of the action for voting, but I think we will, as Mayor Watson had mentioned, we will wait for any comments from the delegates before we make any decision. And that concludes the end of my presentation. I will say there are background materials as well, so that went into the entire planning process that the township has. So I'll just leave it there, but first see if there's any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your presentation, and to you and your team for guiding council and staff and everyone involved through the process. Over to you, council. Any questions of our presenter at this point? Again, keeping in mind we'll look at approval until after we hear from those who have registered to speak to it. I'm not seeing any hands up on the screen.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Watt would like.
Councillor Watt. Sorry, yes, now I see. Thank you.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thanks very much, Lynn, for your presentation. A lot of work's gone into this, and I was very happy to hear our mayor say that, we do have presenters here today, 5 presenters. We don't know that they're all for this topic, so we'll see at that particular time, but I'm sure that some of them at least will be having some comments on this, and it may or may not be something that we need to digest today, something maybe we've already talked about that, but I just want to say thank you, and as Mayor Watson says, we'll play it by ear and see how we make out with the, whether we endorse it today or whether we have a little bit more homework to do, thanks to the people in the audience. So appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Watt. Deputy Mayor, before I hand it over to you, just to look at the timeline here, Lynn, that you've verified. So this evening, we're looking for just a general endorsement and approval of the draft, and then the final version would come to council on April 2nd at that council meeting. Is that still what we're looking towards this evening?
If we can come to conclusion, so the draft plan was presented this evening because it's obviously not final. It will only be final when council endorses and provides approval, at which point it could be finalized this evening. If there are refinements and further comments coming out of this evening, then that was the date. I kind of thought ahead to sort of put some dates on the calendar and looking ahead at your next council meeting if we needed to take it to that next council meeting for final approval.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Deputy Mayor Nelson?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Watson. Thanks again for all your work and your presentation tonight. And as my colleagues have said, I think we're looking forward to hearing some delegations here maybe tonight on the same subject and make a decision probably at that point. So thanks again.
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor. Any other members of council? I see our CAO, Ms. Arthurs.
Thank you, through Mayor Watson. Just to add to what Lynn had indicated, with the draft plan, the only additional information that we were specifically seeking direction was option 1 and option 2 with the mission and vision. So depending on what comes out of this evening, if it's as simple as that decision being made, you could adopt it this evening and it would just be refined and then provided on the website.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Any other questions of our presenter while Lynn's with us still? Okay, seeing nothing, then we will just, at this point, receive your presentation. So just a motion. Nope, we don't need a motion on that. Okay, we will wait until we go further on down.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, my apologies. There was someone in the audience who had raised their hand to ask a question, and I was just shaking my head trying to let them know that we don't take questions from the audience, but I think you may have misinterpreted that, and we do need a motion to receive the presentation.
Thank you for that clarification. I did misinterpret that. No, it's like, no, it's a hard no. So yes, council, please, a motion to receive the presentation. Deputy Mayor Nelson, looks like it's being seconded by Councillor Vervoort. All in favor? And then that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we have a delegation from Maggie Braun with Gather 2030. Madam Clerk, I believe Ms. Braun is joining us on Zoom.
She is. She's just starting her video. Give me one moment.
Okay. There we are. Hello. Welcome. Please, just as a reminder, your delegation is limited to 10 minutes. So when you're ready, Ms. Braun, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for having me back, and to all those that are attending in person and taking part in the public consultation for their community strategic plan. My name is Maggie Braun, and I have a background in ecosystem management. And I just wanted to thank the councilors and the mayor and the staff as well. Martina, do you have my slideshow available? Thank you. So tonight I'm here to speak to the Douro-Dummer strategic plan, a living blueprint used as a guide for decisions and actions for your community's future. Go to the next slide, please. Of note, the council resolved to partner with Sustainable Peterborough on March 18th, 2011, and that information will just come forward a little bit later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So the strategic plan, some items that I noted when reviewing it is under infrastructure. And I will say that the strategic plan I viewed last week is a little bit different than the one that was just put forward on the screen. So I'm speaking to the one that was available to me when I put forward my delegation request. And in that plan, under infrastructure, I do note that it's looking to pursue solar energy for all municipal buildings and properties. And under administration, I also note that there's a reference to acquisition of property and improved technology for public works vehicles. And I wasn't sure if that was a reference to upgrading the municipal fleet to electronic vehicles. And also under the economic development section, and community promotion, it spoke to development would be in keeping with the goals and objectives of the official plan. And last year, when we spoke to the official plan on August 1st, it was pretty clear that the official plan had a very low growth rate for this rural municipality. And I just wanted to point out that the statement about the official plan and keeping development within the goals and objectives of the strategic plan seem to be somewhat of a misnomer if the potential growth for the municipality is quite low. And lastly, under this section of economic development, it refers to providing protection for agricultural, natural heritage, and natural spaces. And again, Douro-Dummer, of course, loves its farms and natural spaces, but we do note that the provincial mapping has arbitrary lines that seem to be restricting private property rights and severances. And that's already a problem for the residents within your municipality. Next slide, please, Martina. And we can come back to this one, but we've already covered it in the August 1st deputation, so we'll just move on to the next slide. So as stated in my presentation on August 1st, 2023, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities sent a municipal primer to Canadian municipalities in 1994, promoting sustainable development through local strategic action. And according to the municipal primer, sustainable development is a term that was coined in the Brundtland Commission. And that paper states, for sustainable development, that land cannot be controlled by individuals and that land and resources must be saved for future generations. So that's where that term came from, and it has to do with private property rights. So I just wanted to note that. Next slide, please. On page 9 of the municipal primer is a flowchart showing how Agenda 21 would be implemented through Canadian municipalities. And if you note the means of implementation, promoting education, public awareness and training, information for decision-making, and transfer of environmentally sound technology. We can go to the next slide. In order to implement this agenda, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities created the Partners for Climate Protection Program in 1994 as well. And they did this in collaboration with the Government of Canada and ICLEI, Governments for Local Sustainability. And the Partners for Climate Protection Program is a means of implementation providing information for decision-making on Agenda 21, or UN directives, as it's now called. So since that time, municipal councils and local NGOs such as Sustainable Peterborough have partnered with ICLEI and the Partners for Climate Protection Program. And as stated, Douro-Dummer adopted a resolution to partner with Sustainable Peterborough in 2011, and Peterborough County partnered around that time as well. Next slide, please. So what does this have to do with your strategic plan? So as a result of these partnerships, municipal plans and official plans, as well as public surveys, are now being drafted in consultation with ICLEI and the Partners for Climate Protection Program. In some cases, municipalities are even beginning to deny public deputations because they state that they're basing their decision-making under the United Nations directives. So what we are seeing in a lot of our municipal plans is an emphasis on the UN directives, including targeting our mobility, energy security, upgrading municipal fleets to quote unquote green technology, and of course solar energy on municipal buildings and so on. So that's what this has to do with strategic plans and why I pointed out the those items on the strategic plan that I saw. And we can go to the next slide, please. So back to the supporting rationale for the Partners for Climate Protection Program and Sustainable Peterborough. There it states in their joining resolution that climate change is increasing the frequency of extreme weather events and that Canada has committed to limiting the global temperature increase to below 2 degrees Celsius. Next slide, please. It's now 30 years later, and we find that only 0.3% of published scientists have stated in their peer-reviewed papers that recent warming is mostly man-made. And the World Climate Declaration recently came out in August 2023, stating that there is no climate emergency, and it's now been signed by 1,904 scientists in the field. Next slide. So the following statements come from this declaration and peer-reviewed studies. And we can just flip through the next ones pretty quickly, Martina. Thank you. Natural factors as well as anthropogenic factors cause climate change. The Earth's orbit and tilt drive glacial and interglacial changes. Next one. The Geological Archive reveals that the Earth's temperature has varied as long as the planet has existed. Next one. The Earth has warmed significantly less than predicted by the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the main source of research for ICLEI Canada, the Partners for Climate Protection Program, and Sustainable Peterborough. These models exaggerate the effect of greenhouse gases and ignore the benefits of additional CO2 in the atmosphere. Next one.
Ms. Braun, there's 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. So the next one, I'll just say CO2 is not a pollutant. It's the basis of all life on Earth. CO2 is not the primary greenhouse gas. Water vapor is. And the warming effect of CO2 goes down as the concentrations increase. CO2 is plant food. It feeds people. Additional CO2 in the atmosphere increases the moisture in the soils and increases the yields of crops worldwide, which is notable for an agricultural region such as Douro-Dummer. Also, that global warming has not increased natural disasters, and the many experts at Clintel, the Global Climate Intelligence Group, are asking why the IPCC is not correcting policymakers and mainstream media for falsely reporting the findings of their reports. So I'm just going to jump through here, Martina, a couple of slides to slide 19. Down we go. Okay, so there is ample evidence that CO2 mitigation measures are as damaging as they are costly, and we strongly oppose the net zero CO2 policies. Go for adaptation instead of mitigation. Adaptation works no matter the cause. And I will note that 95% of rural municipalities in Saskatchewan have recently put out a statement that CO2 is not a pollutant, and they are no longer supporting net zero policies because it's been very harmful to their communities and their rural economies and growth.
Ms.
So
Braun,
the
I'll
next
ask that
slide.
you take 30 seconds to wrap up, please.
Yep. Okay, so these, could you please go to the next slide, Martina? Yeah. And if I could just ask for a minute added, because it's hard to do the slides when someone else is in control of them.
I understand you're already a minute and a half over, and we do have a full agenda this afternoon, but I'm giving you another 30 seconds to wrap things up.
Okay, so the problem with these programs is that they continually ask council to endorse these sustainable development goals and redirect the public funds, such as solar infrastructure and upgrading municipal fleets, to private sustainable development goals. This takes staff and committee time. There's also consequences to councillors who oppose it, and councillors and councils are liable for implementing this program because they endorse it. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the Government of Canada have waived liability for implementing these programs. So lastly, next slide. This program is completely voluntary, as is your participation with Sustainability Peterborough, and you can make a motion to leave at any time. Next slide. Just a reminder that council is the governing body of the municipality and the custodians of its powers, and councils have a duty to represent the public, consider the interests of the municipality, and protect their decision-making options and authorities. So the next slide is the recommendation. So I'm closing now. So the recommendations for this delegation is that council be directed to review the municipal primer of 1994 so that they're fully aware of the agenda that they're implementing by their endorsements, as well as the World Climate Declaration of 2023 so that they're updated on recent climate science, and also that council consider delaying the approval of the strategic plan or at least noting the sustainable development goals within it and consider redirecting those funds to lowering the property tax or finding ways to make life a bit more affordable within your community. And the last slide, please. That council reconsider its approval. That council reconsider its original motion to partner with Sustainable Peterborough. And that motion is provided for you on the screen. And with that, the residents of Peterborough, of Douro-Dummer, want to support you in asserting your authority over these voluntary programs and assist in providing you with further information on these programs. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. And thank you for giving me that extra time.
Thank you. Okay, council, over to you. And folks in the chamber, thank you for your applause, but please keep in mind we, for audio reasons with the mics and screen, just to keep the noise down in the chamber. Council, any questions or discussion? Otherwise, we're just looking for a motion on the presentation. Councillor Vervoort.
Thank you, Mayor Watson. Thank you very much, Maggie, for the presentation here again today. Very much appreciated. And with that, I would like to make a motion to receive the presentation.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Nelson.
I'll second that motion with thanks.
Thank you. Any discussion from council? Then we'll just call for the vote. All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ms. Braun.
Thank you.
Okay, on to item 8.4. We have a public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment. And we just need somebody to move to open the public meeting. I'm seeing two hands. Councillor Watt is making the motion, seconded by Councillor Vervoort. All in favor? And that motion carries. And we'll hand the floor over to our planner, Ms. Coulter.
Thank you, Mayor Watson, members of council, staff, and the public. This is the public meeting for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, file number R-03-24. Council has before them report planning 2024-07 with the recommendation that report planning 2024-07 dated March 19th, 2024 regarding zoning bylaw amendment, file R-0324 be received, and that council receive all comments related to zoning bylaw amendment, file R-03-24, and that the bylaw to enact the amendment be passed at the appropriate time in the meeting. As a brief history of the file, the owners, Peter and Wendy Smith, have applied to amend the existing zoning on portions of their property, known municipally as 1090 Fourth Line Road, South Dummer. I'm not sure if the owners are online. They are with us today, and maybe even their agent, Marty Saunders from GBL.
Yeah.
Perfect. So you're here in the audience. Hello. Notice of the public meeting and complete application was given on February 27th, 2024 by ordinary mail and email as prescribed under the regulations of the Ontario Planning Act. Notices were also posted on the subject property and on the township website. This rezoning is required as a condition of consent application file B-93-23 that was conditionally approved by Peterborough County on February 8th, 2024. The subject property is currently zoned the rural zone and the development zone. The zoning bylaw proposes to rezone the severed parcel from the development zone and the rural zone to the special district 55 zone to permit the land to be used for residential purposes and to recognize a deficient lot frontage of 30 meters on Rock Road. A copy of the draft bylaw is attached to the report. As of the writing of this report, there were no comments received from members of the public. Comments were received from the following agencies. Enbridge Gas had no objections to the application. Hiawatha First Nation had no questions, comments, or concerns. Autonomy Region Conservation Authority. Autonomy conservation mapping indicates that the proposed development on the severed lands is not within a known hazard. Therefore, it is the opinion of Autonomy conservation staff that the application remains consistent with section 3.1 of the provincial policy statement. Autonomy conservation mapping indicates that the severed lands are not subject to Ontario Regulation 167/06, which is the authority's development, interference with wetlands, and alterations to shorelines and watercourses regulations. So therefore, permits from Autonomy Region Conservation Authority are not required. It was determined that the subject property is not located within a vulnerable area that is subject to Trent Source Protection Plan policies, and significant drinking water threats are not possible, and restricted land use notice is not required. Copies of the agency comments are attached to the report. The application was also circulated to senior staff on February 27th, and there were no concerns identified. So as proposed, the bylaw is consistent with the provincial policy statement and does conform to the growth plan and the official plan. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Mayor Watson, for any questions from the public or council.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Coulter. So is there anyone present who would like to comment on the application? Madam Clerk, is there anybody on the Zoom call that we're aware of that's to be commenting on this?
Madam Mayor, the agents are online. I'm not sure if they have any comments to make though.
Okay, so I'm not seeing anybody in the chamber stepping forward. So now I'll move it over to council to ask any questions of staff or agents. Seeing no questions, Councillor Watt.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much. Hey, this is a lot to absorb. I know that when you're going through these type of things, whatever. So you and Wendy are all good on everything that's been transpired here and working well with the planner, and you're good to go with everything that's being proposed?
Yep.
Excellent. That's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Watt. Any other questions or comments from council? Councillor Johnston?
I just make a motion to close the public meeting.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Nelson, is that seconding? Yes, thank you. All in favor? And that motion carries. So now we do have the option to move up the bylaw to address that. Of course, we do need a motion to first receive the report and all comments. So we'll start there. Deputy Mayor Nelson is making that motion, seconded by Councillor Watt. All in favor? That motion carries. And we'll flip over to the bylaw then, and I believe that is item number 13.2, Madam Clerk, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it is, Madam Mayor.
Okay, perfect. A motion to pass that. That's from Councillor Watt, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nelson. All in favor? And that motion carries. There we go. And of course, it's going in the queue for the regular process to follow. So thank you very much for that. Okay, on to the next public meeting, another zoning bylaw amendment for file R-04-24. A motion to open the public meeting on that, please. Deputy Mayor Nelson, second by Councillor Verfort. All in favor? That motion carries. And back over to you, Ms. Coulter.
Thank you, Mayor Watson, members of council, staff, and the public. This is the public meeting for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, file number R-04-24. Council has before them report planning 2024-08 with the recommendation that report planning 2024-08 dated March 19th, 2024 regarding zoning bylaw amendment file R-04-24 be received and that council receive all comments related to zoning bylaw amendment file R-04-24 and that the bylaw to enact the amendment be passed at the appropriate time in the meeting. Owners Jesse and Deborah Murphy have applied to amend the existing zoning on portions of their property known municipally as 1076 County Road 40. I did speak with with Deborah Murphy. I'm not sure if she's joining us today, but she wasn't certain with the weather. Notice of the public meeting and complete application was given on February 27th by ordinary mail and email as prescribed under the regulations of the Ontario Planning Act. Notices were also posted on the subject property and on the township website. This rezoning is required as a condition of consent application file B-65-23 that was conditionally approved by Peterborough County on November 30th, 2023. The subject property is currently zoned the residential zone. The zoning bylaw does propose to place a holding provision on the severed parcel and will rezone the parcel from the residential zone to the residential holding zone. The severed parcel is adjacent to a historical cemetery and it is considered to be within an area of archaeological potential. So an archaeological assessment is required prior to any development of the severed parcel. The holding symbol will limit the development on the lot until an archaeological assessment has been completed and accepted by the applicable ministry. A copy of the draft bylaw is attached to the report. Comments were received from Mark and Christy Leslie, who requested to be notified of council's decision. As of the writing of this report, there were no other comments received from members of the public. Comments were received from the following agencies. Peterborough County Public Works, Engineering and Design had no objections, comments, or concerns with respect to this application. Enbridge Gas had no objections to the application. The Autonomy Region Conservation Authority indicated that their mapping suggests that the proposed development is not located within a known hazard. Therefore, it is the opinion of Autonomy Conservation staff that the application remains consistent with section 3.1 of the provincial policy statement. Orca mapping indicates that the lands are not subject to Ontario Regulation 167/06, which is their development, interference with wetlands, and alterations to shorelines and water courses regulation, and permits from Orca are not required. It was also determined that the subject property is not located within a vulnerable area that is subject to the Trent Source Protection Plan policies. Significant drinking water threats are not possible and a restricted land use notice is not required. Copies of the agency comments are also attached to the report. This application was circulated to senior staff on February 27th as well, and there were no concerns identified. And as proposed, the draft bylaw is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the growth plan and the official plan. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Mayor Watson, for any questions from the public and council.
Thank you, Ms. Coulter. So this is the part of the meeting, of course, we'll open the floor for comments and questions from the gallery. Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on the application? Seeing nothing. Any member of council who would like to ask questions of staff or agents? Again, seeing nothing at all. So at this point, we'll just be looking for a motion. Councillor Vervoort?
I'll make a motion to close the public meeting.
Thank you very much. And Deputy Mayor Nelson, are you seconding that? Yes, all in favor? And that motion carries. So we now just need a motion to receive the report and any comments. And then again, we can look to pass the bylaw. Councillor Watt? You're moving the, to receive the report?
To receive the report,
Thank
yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston, you're seconding that. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? That motion carries. And then we are looking at bylaw 13.3 on the agenda, I believe, Madam Clerk, yes? So a motion to approve that. Deputy Mayor Nelson, seconded by Councillor Johnston. All in favor? And that motion carries. Again, thank you very much. Okay, so we will now shift over to the public comment period of our agenda. We did receive requests for presenters. We have 5 presenters who will be speaking. The order, I believe, was published on the agenda. And I apologize if my order is going to be slightly different, so correct me if it goes against that. But currently I have Pat Smallman, Sue Fields, Lynn McCabe, Nadine Ellis Mathy, and Marie Howren will be the speaking order. Each speaker will be capped at 5 minutes. So we will begin with our first speaker, who's making their way up to the lectern. Hello, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Pat Smallman, and I've lived in Douro-Dummer for 39 years. And I wanted to tell the mayor and deputy mayor and the councillors and the staff that I really appreciate the job that you do for us. And I also appreciate that the meeting format has been changed to allow me to speak to items that are on the agenda. I do appreciate that. So what is in our strategic plan? There's a vision, core values, strategic pillars. We went through that from the consultant group. And there's words such as two-way communication, the bond between the municipality and the residents, and storytelling to promote our municipality. These are great ideas, great words, and years ago, this would be an awesome plan. But now we're entering a new era. And this era is dominated by NGOs, non-government organizations that are using repetitive messaging to nudge and direct all levels of government, even right down to the municipal level, to adopt their vision of the future and which would benefit their organizations and not you and I at the municipal level in Douro-Dummer. The CAO of the municipalities, they're the direct conduit to the flow of information from these higher levels of government. And so the information that's brought forward has to be carefully analyzed, and that making sure that the content and the direction of those nudges are being brought forward to ensure that they are not detrimental to Douro-Dummer. And you should not, I know that you have a Toronto law firm involved in hiring a new CAO, but I want you to get directly involved in the procurement, in the selection process of this, because it's a very important position. Our strategic plan is a perfect example of these outside influences, a consulting group who have produced a cookie cutter plan that would be applicable in all municipalities. There's all those keywords and beautiful pictures, and with a few tweaks, they can personalize it for Douro-Dummer or any other municipality. Now the municipalities have the same strategic plan,
the same direction towards NGO's vision of a new world government. Consultants and they even made a mistake on the vision plan. I don't know if they did on the plan here, but the one I was looking at, they said create a home and place where it can all live and thrive. They left there the word we, that's you and me. And then they cut and pasted the same vision into the public survey. Martina wouldn't have allowed that. Under the strategic pillar, service and modernization and innovation, you said that you want to update our website, and that would be very good because I do find it difficult finding some things on our website. And number 4 was to promote community engagement, where residents can sign up to receive information. I don't want you to discriminate against people that don't have a computer or they don't have the computer skills to feel comfortable on this format. Your plan embraces and promotes technology. And technology equals isolation. It's you and a computer. We're playing right into the hands of the NGOs. They want us isolated, and they do not want us to be part of the community who will stand up and push back together. And now they're pushing AI. In fact, Douro-Dummer, their library last Saturday had a meeting pushing AI or talking about AI. And it was brought up there that there is no law yet that they even have to disclose the fact that AI is being used. So if we have that happening, what are they going to do to our municipality or our plans? They can manipulate the data. They can even change our storytelling to something that they prefer because maybe it might be offensive to somebody. They've already done it. And all of our personal information and metadata will be put together and sent to a central location somewhere in the world.
Ms. Mullen, I'll just give you a 1-minute warning. Just a 1-minute warning.
Okay. There's a study from Western University saying that the electronic voting can be manipulated. What about emergencies? Are you able to continue with your technology-based system in an emergency if there's extended power outages? Do you have paper backup? Do you have electronic backup? You are personally liable to continue governing in those situations. And we don't want you to be open for lawsuits. So I think that you should be engaging the people more on a personal level. Your tax bills go out to everybody's home quarterly. What if you put a newsletter in there? Tell them about these things, the new pickleball court opening, things like that. Have town hall meetings, bring them back, where people can come together and talk about the issues. Years ago, Adolf Hitler said, I'm going to dominate the world. And people said no, they stood up and World War II fought back. Then my parents were included in that. So that's why I'm standing up here today to fight for peace and freedom for my children and my grandchildren. So if you have difficult decisions ahead of you, and I know you will have, I want you to think of the cenotaph that's right down the road from this very building, and you remember the names that are on there that gave their lives to fight for our peace and freedom that we've enjoyed all our lives. And then I know that you'll make good decisions for the members of Douro-Dummer.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, folks, if we could bring up Sue Fields. And thank you, and I'll remind you, it's 5 minutes for your remarks when you're ready.
Honorable Mayor, esteemed councilors, and valued community members, my name is Sue Fields. Thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening. I stand before you not as only as a concerned citizen, but as a fellow community member who, along with my husband Glenn, our daughter Olivia, and her husband Mike, and their 3 children, and our adult daughter Cody with special needs, has invested in the future of Douro-Dummer to purchasing a farm here 5 years ago. Our commitment to this community is rooted in the land we cherish and the values we uphold. Today, I come before you to voice my concerns before we go further into a path of greater destruction for our beloved community. Honorable Mayor, councilors, and fellow community members, we stand at a crossroads where technology and community values intersect. As we consider the strategic plan and specifically the expansion of 5G towers in our area, it is imperative that we reflect on our core values of fiscal responsibility, transparency, service excellence, and environmental stewardship. Fiscal responsibility, the investment in 5G through federal, provincial, municipal, and privately owned companies to provide the infrastructure promises faster connectivity and potential economic growth. However, we must weigh those options and those proposed benefits against the cost. I am speaking not just to the initial financial outlay, but to the ongoing operating costs and, more importantly, the potential health risk associated with increased exposure to electromagnetic fields. Are we prepared to bear these costs for the sake of advancement? Are we willing to put our family members at greater risk for the sake of proposed convenience 5G promises? Are we absolutely certain that insurance companies will cover the cost of the health costs, not to mention the potential loss of livestock and crops? I would hazard a guess that J. Murray Jones and his group of wardens and the Eeyore and Selgap project did not take the time or the interest in researching these hazards before graciously accepting the check from our former MP, Monsa. The $300 million project was a big pat on their back. For now, transparency. Your commitment to transparency obliges you to share all research findings with the community, the people who voted you into your positions. I was taught at a very young age by my late father, Chuck Russell, who was a very astute businessman, that if it sounds too good to be true, it most likely is. As our elected officials, you are obligated to ask more questions, to fully understand the impact of your decisions. Please do not accept the offer out of lack of knowledge or understanding. Friends, studies have shown both the potential of 5G and the concerns it raises. It is crucial that every member of our community has access to this information to make informed decisions about our collective future. I have with me pages and pages of research providing the health risks. In fact, I have with me today 24-page document by Physicians for Safe Technology with more than 200 studies alone documenting the risks. Some of the known side effects are impairing people's brains, their ears, their eyes, their heart, their skin, and their mood, among other physical ailments. I also have a 23-page document from Canadians for Safe Technology that I will leave with you as well. Honorable Mayor, councillors, and fellow community members, these are real people with known adverse effects. Furthermore, Dr. Magda Havas, PhD, a Trent University professor, has spent a good part of her career educating on the known risks. I have her biography that I will leave with you as well. Service excellence. While 5G technology may enhance communication services, we must ask at what cost? Will the service improvement outweigh the potential risks to our health and well-being? Excellence in service must not compromise the safety and health of our community members. Environment. The environment.
Your 1 minute warning.
Thank you. The environmental impact of expanding 5G infrastructure is not to be underestimated. The proliferation of towers could have unforeseen effects on local wildlife and the natural beauty of our community. There are 10 EU countries that have banned or restricted telecom suppliers deemed to be high risk from their 5G network infrastructure. Once again, I point you to the documents that I will receive, that I will leave with Martina, with the hope that she can provide each one of you with a copy. They will make for some interesting reading. We all must consider how this infrastructure aligns with our commitment to preserving and protecting our environment. I would also like to briefly go back to mentioning the cost of electricity to operate this 5G, or better known as surveillance towers.
Please wrap up.
Our conveniences to our community. Please let us all consider the cost. I would like to mention the rollout of EV charging stations as well. Who will bear that cost? I know Elon Musk has deep pockets, but he is not responsible for ensuring that we have electricity to operate our homes and our businesses at the cost of EV power stations. Have we
Ms. Vale?
considered the grid? That I will leave for another time and another conversation. In conclusion, as we deliberate on the further rollout of 5G and other infrastructure improvements, let us ensure that our actions today do not compromise our values or the well-being of our future generations. Let us move forward with caution, with wisdom, and a deep respect for our community that we all cherish. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will now call on Lynn McCabe. And again, I'll remind you, 5 minutes and the floor is yours.
I don't have the voice that she did, so I'll do my best. Hello, Mayor Watson, council members, fellow community members, and staff. I come before you tonight as a resident of Douro for over 25 years. I have many concerns when it comes to the future of our community. However, for the allotted time restraints, I will focus my attention on the section labeled Business Attraction, Promotion, and Expansion, and in particular, item 4 titled Provide Incentives to New and Growing Businesses while ensuring existing businesses have opportunities to flourish. I, at one time, was considering starting a small business, and as per my routine on big decisions, I drafted a yay and a nay page of reference to make my final decision. Sadly, the nay far outweighed the yay, and so I took a step further to talk to a few local business owners for their input, and in particular, what the last 4 years has done to their business and how it affected them has only confirmed my nay. The hardship, the stress, the extra costs, the jumping through unproven nonsense and hoops to try and stay compliant during these years have left them broken in more ways than one. This brings me to the following questions of how realistic this strategic plan looks as we face a future of uncertainty and potentially more lockdowns. The mandates and health policies coming down frequently and ever changing from unelected organization agendas that have obviously become so fully infiltrated into all levels of our governments by way of non-compliance, ticket threats, and social shaming are the reason many business owners are afraid to voice their concerns or have their voices heard for fear of social backlash and lost business. Is there reference in this draft strategic plan to protect them if and when the next lockdown hits and a higher level of government or NGO decides who is essential and who is not?
Here, here.
Think the upcoming WHO pandemic treaty being voted on in May of 2024, which may further allow a power beyond our federal government to make those decisions. Think one world order. We are still seeing the daily news fears of the never-ending pandemic and now the so-called climate crisis and disease X or measles tactics being shoved down our throats just to prepare us for the next event that they already have planned. I think the last 4 years' outcome has now proven this is no longer just a conspiracy. My point being that this draft strategic plan cannot be vague and needs specific detail on how our township would respond to protecting existing and new businesses now and in the future. I didn't even fill in the online survey because I felt the survey itself was very leading and limited in response options and details. I would also like to mention that I feel this whole age of digital convenience is the main reason why we have lost our communication, and I believe it may be high time to reinvent the town hall gatherings for folks to be more aware of what has been slipping through and under our noses while we were purposely distracted. I have sent you enough information previously to explain what is really going on behind these fluffy words of sustainability, smart, and strategic, and with reference to the facts that they do not have anything to do with bettering our future. They are only words to further hand-tie, manipulate, and control us, while all the while increasing our taxes.
Yeah.
I don't blame anyone here for not understanding things that were incentivized and sold to previous council and mayors, as I wasn't paying close enough attention back then myself. I was relying on the person I voted in at the time to be doing that. And at this point, if you now claim ignorance of the UN agenda, it is no longer a defense, because you have been made aware of it all more than once, and I fear there may be cause for municipal or personal liability should this directive be continued. How many times have we come here with our concerns to only hear our hands are tied at this level, we are bound by a higher level of governance, etc. And that is the real future strategic plan, to further remove your voice and to control here in this room and township. And quite frankly, I believe your positions too will soon become obsolete in the not too distant future. However, there is a glimmer of hope. There is an opportunity now to turn this around, to remove us from the UN directive and build our community back up by our resident input and involvement. Most people feel there is no hope and have given up because they constantly get the red tape thrown at them. But I believe in this township and we can change it.
Your 1 minute warning.
Thank you. I like to believe that you, Mayor Watson, and council aren't and weren't aware of the implications this put on our future in way back then. I like to believe you truly have the best interests of the families and businesses of this community at heart, and will do whatever possible to get us back to grassroots of simple, accountable governance and transparency, truly focused on the freedom in this community that we love and we want to see flourish once again. Finally, I would like to thank all who attended here this evening. I realize the time of these meetings are not made convenient for most people. Funny that. But we do need people to show up, be involved, and care about their future and the future of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have our next speaker, Nadine Ellis Maffey. And you too get 5 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Council, and fellow community members. My name is Nadine Ellis Maffey, and I've been a Douro-Dummer community member and business owner for the last 8 years. I appreciate you taking the time to hear what I have to say and hope that you understand it comes from a place of good intentions and concern for my community and the direction it's headed in. I'm here today as a concerned mother, business owner, and community member who's been keeping a close eye on how non-government organizations have infiltrated and influenced our elected municipal officials' abilities to independently govern on behalf of their community members. In particular, I ask you to rescind any motions to participate in United Nations directive programs such as the FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, ICLEI, the International Council on Local and Environmental Issues, and PCP, Partners for Climate Protection Program. Was everyone made aware of this and what the future will look like if our township continues on this path and we don't make some changes now? You've previously been made aware of the UN directives programs, and you now have every opportunity to remove our township from their grasp and do what is best for our community's future. I'm here to let council know that Douro-Dummer residents, business owners, are becoming aware of who is pulling the strings in this puppet show. But make no doubt, we will hold our elected officials accountable. There will be no excuse for council members to say that they were unaware regarding this agenda, disguised through the township's strategic plan. But since you followed the FCM municipal primer, creating your strategic plan, I'd like to speak about its pillar of business attraction, expansion, and retention. You state that you will promote our township through storytelling. What exactly is that, and how is it accomplished? Because I certainly hope it's not the vulgar drag queen kind of storytelling that has currently been going on in public libraries and churches around this country. Because that's not how I and many other community members want our story to be told. You speak of promoting our township, our brand identity, and what we do by improving signage to help people navigate. Instead of new road signs, how about signage letting community members and visitors know where they can find our local businesses, such as a visitor information sign or an area that people can see what Douro-Dummer has to offer. Perhaps new community members receive a welcome letter, easily put into the quarterly tax bill, letting them know where they can support our local businesses and shop for local farm fresh products. Douro-Dummer boasts about its deep farming and agricultural roots. Is council aware that farmers around the world are rising up and taking a stand against government overreach? Farmers, not only globally, but locally. They're suffering due to government-caused high inflation, ridiculous climate policies, backed not by real science, and taxes. Farmers are being forced to stop doing what we love because simply we can't afford to live. Under the guise of climate crisis, farmers are being penalized. And trust me, no one cares more for the planet than farmers who are trying to make it better through, your words, sustainable and regenerative farming practices. With the latest cash grab being the carbon tax, starting on April 1st. Sadly, I know many farmers who soon will no longer be able to afford to farm. Farmers feed cities. No farmers, no food, no futures. It's as simple as that. If a farm can't even make a few small severances for unusable agricultural land that they have to try and recoup a fraction of the financial losses at the hands of the government, how will they survive? Or perhaps that's the plan. Sell up their generational farms because their future generations will be taxed out of farming. How will this strategic plan support local Douro-Dummer farmers and agricultural businesses? Will generational farming be a thing of the past for Douro-Dummer? You want to improve incentives to new and growing businesses while ensuring existing businesses have opportunities to flourish. How does council plan to do this when it's near impossible for you to support the construction and trades businesses that already exist? It's become apparent how important going digital is to council, yet your digital cloud permit system has been failing your local construction businesses, contractors, and tradesmen for well over 3 years. I've heard firsthand from local construction and trades businesses, it's been a nightmare dealing with the Douro-Dummer building department. If you even ask some, they would tell you, and I quote, "You couldn't pay me to build there." Yet Selwyn Township uses the same cloud permit system, and they're very easy to deal with. And they can be reached in person. So why is this digital technology not being fully utilized by your building inspectors and building department to help businesses grow and flourish? How many highly paid chief building inspectors does Douro-Dummer have to go through before previous years of neglect in the cloud permit system are taken care of? I'm speaking directly to the large number of open or expired building permits that residents are now receiving letters for. Some permits 2 to 3 years old. Permits they had believed had been signed off on, completed, and closed.
Your 1 minute
By
warning.
your building department and inspectors. Some letters are even asking for payment to extend a permit that was already paid for, completed, and should have been closed. Why is there no proof of this in the cloud system? Are you aware that contractors, tradesmen, and homeowners are taking pictures to show proof of their work? So because the building department is coming back stating inspections didn't happen or it wasn't closed, it's not in the cloud. Clearly, the building department is not following through with their responsibility to finish the details digitally in the cloud permit system, thus creating a backlog of work, a delay to contractors and tradesmen, as well as undue stress to your community members. Perhaps the old way of having a paper trail wasn't so bad after all. And that when an inspector came to a job site, he actually gave a yellow paper ticket showing that the inspection had been done and would be closed. One of the biggest complaints I've heard when reaching out to local construction businesses and trades is about building inspections. An inspection date is set, contractors and trades are waiting on the job site for their 3-hour inspection time slot as required by the building department, but many times no building inspector even shows up, not even a common courtesy phone call, text, or email. Then they look into the cloud system and apparently their date had been changed. Again, no notification on this, wasting time and money.
Please wrap up your comments.
I've spoken to contractors and tradesmen who have said that the wait time to even get a simple question answered to move forward with a project is unacceptable. And when they do call the building department, they can't actually speak to someone to get answers. They have to leave a message in hopes that the response time doesn't cost more money, time, and delays. I called the Township Building Department. It is a 3-week wait to possibly get a response from the building department. This is absurd and needs to be addressed before you could ever prioritize the pillar of business attraction, expansion, and retention in the strategic plan. I thank you for your time. I hope that you'll take what I've said into consideration when making important decisions on behalf of our community members and hopefully independent, non-government organizations when spending our hard-earned money. Woo!
Okay, we'll bring up our last and final speaker, Marie Howren. And again, you have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, councillors, and interested members of the community. My name is Marie Howren. I'm a taxpayer and a homeowner in the Township of Douro for the past 32 years. I'd like to raise a few points about the high-level draft strategic plan that I saw presented on your website. Your report states a few things. First of all, it mentions the core value of fiscal responsibility to ensure we meet our financial obligations and long-term viability of our aging facilities, new capital assets, with a focus on affordable housing, opportunities for youth, accommodating our aging populations, and supporting small business while providing reliable internet. We have the strategic pillar that was given to us in the report called infrastructure renewal. Prioritize our roads, put actionable and measurable plans in place to replace our aging infrastructure, make asset management a core focus of the budget process. None of it seems very different from what we've seen in the past. What seems to be missing, though, in your strategic plan, I just want to point this out while thanking you for putting one in place, is responsible financial investment, is that you don't mention the taxpayer base. It's not mentioned at all in your strategic plan, other than to be responsible. It is mentioned, though, that these taxpayers actually pay with their taxes to sustain the infrastructure that you have supposedly well planned and considered any infrastructure increases the impact on the tax base. But here's the interesting thing. The average household income in Douro-Dummer is $108,000 according to this document. An average house tax bill would be for federal taxes approximately $16,200. Provincial taxes, $8,500. CPP, $3,700. And EI premiums, approximately $1,000, leaving a net household income of $78,500. Now, if we subtract, assuming this is a taxpayer, approximately $3,500 in our municipal taxes, leaving off education taxes and all the rest, we've now got approximately $75,000 for this family to survive before sales tax, before carbon tax, and before whatever other tax that family has to pay, including their food, heat, and hydro. So what I'm asking is, does this township consider the financial impact to its taxpayers before it formulates a grand strategic plan? And where is that pillar? The pillar that is the taxpayer. In 2018, when we consider our assets, the province brought out the AMP, or Asset Management Planning Directive, for municipalities. It identified specific dates to deliver the AMP plan. By July 1st, municipalities were to finalize their strategic asset management policy of 2019. By 2022, municipalities were to have approved the asset management plan for core assets, roads, bridges, culverts, water, wastewater, stormwater, and that identified as well the current level of service and the cost to maintain that level of service. By 2024, municipalities were to have approved the asset management plan, so that's this year, by July, approve your asset management plan for all municipal infrastructure assets and identify those levels of service and the cost to maintain the level of service. And by July 2025, municipalities are to approve their asset management plan for all their municipal infrastructure, and that builds on the requirements that were set out this year in 2024. But my question is, I didn't see at all in the bare bones of the strategic plan any mention to this, the asset management plan and the importance of it, as well as the delivery dates. I also didn't see on the municipal website, the asset management plan itself, the AMP plan, other than a reference from 2013 that identified in that asset management plan significant funding deficiencies in all those asset categories.
Your
So
1 minute
I guess
warning.
what I'm asking is, how do we develop a new strategic plan without knowing where are we with the current one? And how important is the taxpayer in all of this? And I just want to comment lastly, the last strategic plan was for 2015 to 2018. What was the result of it? What did we do with that? A lot of taxpayer dollars were spent on, again, a consultant report to develop it. Before we go sinking more money into this, shouldn't we ask what happened with the last one? And where are we with the current government mandates to produce these other asset management plans? And the final thing, I'd just like to make a comment is on the open government and open process in developing this strategic plan, or the lack thereof. Where it was mention of a survey, I went online. I think I might have even completed it. I will say that 46 surveys, according to this consultant, were completed. The timeline to complete this was astronomically short. I would have loved if they would have displayed that. What was the timeline to complete the survey for the public? I don't find that acceptable. I just want to say it really upset me that it was so short. A meeting was then held to familiarize the councillors with the strategic plan, but the public wasn't invited, although a few members did show up. They were not allowed to comment. And then breakout sessions, I understand, took place, but they were invitation only. Are you serious? This is an open process? Almost each one of you individually as councillors and mayor about increasing the open process in this township. If there's nothing else you can do, I'd like you to consider the comments I've made here tonight and increasing the open access to information. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to stand here tonight and at least voice my concerns. And that's because in the past, you have heard our comments. So I appreciate that deeply. But more so, I'd like to see you continue along that line and allow this strategic plan to actually reflect the voice of the citizens. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll just get the room settled. Okay, folks. Thank you all for your comments and participation. So at this point, council, we have received the presentation from the consultant on the strategic plan, but not provided any further direction. So at this point, I'll hand it over to council for going back to the presentation for any comments, direction, questions. Where do we go from here? Councillor Johnston.
Yeah, I obviously think we need to defer this and sit down with have another meeting. There's an awful lot of good information brought forward, and we do appreciate your concern and your interest on what we're doing. We didn't try to shove this down anybody's throat. It's a basic plan that we want to do, and maybe we didn't give you enough time or enough input, but I do think with your concerns and comments is that we need to take another look at it. So I'm going to ask that we defer any movement forward on passing any regulation on this.
Okay, Councillor Johnson. So just if I can get a little bit of clarification, it sounds like you're about to make a motion to defer. Is that correct?
Definitely.
And just so I understand, and so council understands, what is it that we're looking to defer to? Are we looking to defer so that we can have more comment from public? Are we looking to defer so we can have more meeting as council to discuss what and how far out are we looking to defer? And I'm just looking to get clarification before we start going around in circles on this.
Well, I would like to defer until we go over these comments. There's an awful lot of good comments that came forward. And I think we need to defer it to another meeting where we can, I don't think it's very serious if we're not worried about passing it tonight or even April 1st or 2nd, whatever our meeting is. So I think we have to, as soon as we get put it on the agenda, is to bring it up where we can go through it again. And we sit down and go through all these comments and we can bring forward to the table where we can add to what we've already got.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Vervoort, are you seconding the motion?
I would like to second it and just provide maybe a little bit more commentary around that. I think, thank you very much to everyone who is here tonight. If there are 5 people doing a presentation, there are definitely more than 5 people at home who feel the same way too. And as I say, definitely appreciate comments tonight. To Councillor Johnson's point, I don't think we need to set an exact date tonight of when we approve the final strategic plan, but let's have some time for council to talk more to the public and then council to and communicate back to staff in terms of timeline when we can have another meeting and go over the strategic plan again as a council.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Arthurs?
Through Madam Mayor, maybe we could suggest, if council wishes, we could look at reopening the survey and moving the discussion to committee of the whole, and then bringing something back so council can have a more fulsome discussion at that time with any additional feedback that we receive from the public, and make a decision on how you want to move forward.
Thank you. And just to confirm, our next committee of the whole meeting, I believe, is April 9th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, sorry, I didn't hear the response. Councillor Vervoort?
Through Mayor Watson, thank you, Elena. That's a great suggestion, and I think to go along with Councillor Johnson's motion here, just to open the public survey, and maybe let's have the public survey, online survey, available up until maybe 3 days before the committee of the whole meeting. Does that give staff enough time, or maybe a week or 5 days, just so that staff has enough time to put everything back to back into a proper format to give folks? But
A new survey.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, folks, we hear you, but this is for council to discuss. We've listened, and now we're trying to sort this out. So we have a committee of the whole meeting on April 9th. Councillor Johnston, you've made the motion originally to defer. Are you comfortable with deferring it to committee of the whole on April 9th?
Yes.
Okay, and the seconder, Councillor Vervoort, it sounds like you're also in favor of that, and also opening up the survey. I should have noted as well. So now we've got a motion on the floor, so just discussion on the motion. Anything from council on that? Councillor Vervoort?
I would like to remind, I know there was some folks in the gallery asking for a public meeting. I'd also like to note that everyone on this council has their phone number and email available online. by all means, phone numbers are there for a reason other than window decoration. So you want to talk, pick up the phone.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing nothing further, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Okay, so we are now moving on to staff reports. We have the report and capital status, capital project status report 10.1. Are there any questions from council or items to discuss? So we'll just be looking then for a motion, or sorry, Deputy Mayor Nelson.
I'll move to receive the report.
Thank you very much. Someone to second that? Councillor Johnston? All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. And now we have, I'm sorry, Councillor Watt.
Could we maybe take just a 5-minute break? There's some people in the audience that are starting to leave now, so we got, and I don't want to say you have to leave, you're welcome to stay. And just give people a chance to get up and you know, we're trying to hear you online and so on and so forth, but by all means, I'm not trying to force anybody to the council chambers. You're welcome to stay for the entire meeting. But thank you very much, and I just want to give that opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. That sounds like a good plan. We'll take a 5-minute recess and reconvene at 6:05.
I'll phone you.
Okay, folks. I know, I don't have the gavel. Let's get started, shall we? Thank you very much for your cooperation and for that brief break. So moving along on our agenda, we did leave off with item 10.2, the status of septic systems in the township's zoning bylaw building department. And I believe our CDO, Don Helleman, will be speaking to that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Council in front of you have my report 2024-03. And the attempt was to lay it out so you could see the decision-making process on how we define a septic or why we define a septic as a structure, and kind of what the effect that has on how it gets implemented through the zoning bylaw. Maybe just a little bit of additional information to help you understand a bit more of our process for zoning bylaw amendments, internal zoning bylaw amendments, is the building and planning department definitely, we monitor the kind of the difficulties or challenges that we see applicants when they come through the door and what they're struggling with. So sometimes it's the interpretation of the bylaw isn't clear enough for them to come to a decision on how they should move forward. Sometimes it's that we see the same kind of applications always seeking the same type of relief. And so what we do is we monitor those and we bring forward recommendations to council and we say, we've seen a lot of this is what we need to do. So if I drew your attention to, for instance, our second dwelling unit bylaw, we did a bylaw amendment for that last year, and that was one of the things that we identified that people were struggling with on how to interpret it. It was too vague, they couldn't deal with it on their own without kind of a lot of communication with us. So we cleaned that up, and myself, I think it works, it's been working great as far as people are understanding exactly what we're asking for, that's spelled out for them. Currently, we see some issues with 328, our non-compliant buildings and structures under our zoning bylaw. And we've started the process on a zoning bylaw amendment with that. So we start with the research first. We've held meetings with the county to discuss what that would look like. We review it against the provincial policies, the OP, what our current bylaw is, and we're actually then also researching, we research all the county municipalities, or all the municipalities within the county, we research their bylaws. We're focused heavily right now on North Kawartha as we share the lake with them. And we want to see kind of the same type of development if we can on Stony, for instance. And so that's something that we're really focusing on. The intent is to bring that forward to council and talk about that bylaw amendment. And so my recommendation in my report was that we hold off on doing a zoning bylaw amendment specific to septics being introduced or being reviewed or viewed differently than a structure for a few different reasons, but probably one of them is we don't have, we haven't seen anyone come through solely to seek relief for this provision of the bylaw. So typically if we see someone who can't meet the bylaw, we're going to see a planning application. And we haven't seen one specifically for septics or required specifically because of the septic. And because of that, I feel that that kind of our biggest one right now is our 328 non-compliant structures, and that's why my recommendation is to wait until the new bylaw is amended once the OP is passed, and then we can look at it further. Then that is why I've come to that recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Yeah, that's in my report or to what I just spoke.
Thank you very much. Council, over to you, Deputy Mayor Nelson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for your report, Don. I appreciate the work that's went into it. I'm kind of the fellow that's been behind this, that's asked for this, or spoke to it at our last council meeting, I believe. And I see things a little different. I have had lots of members of the public and contractors, and one in specific that was looking for relief. I know they went ahead and a permit was issued, or you mentioned that to me, that a permit was issued, but not at the cost of a lot of money being spent by them to make things fit 15 meter setback, which I believe is being totally unfair. We do not line up with any of the other municipalities in the county from a road, a 15-meter setback from a road is not acceptable in my opinion. I believe it's something like pickleballs. I believe the pickleball courts, we took that right out of the zoning bylaw as it being a structure. I believe a septic system is, I know under the technical term and under the building code that they call it a structure, but I don't look at it as a structure. It can be easily moved or shifted or changed if there's anything that needs to be done within that road allowance or within the property lines. If you have 3 meters setback, it's always been that way within the county for when the city health unit looked after this for us. It was always 3 meters. And I see no reason why we need to get in line so that every contractor, no matter what, we've got contractors working throughout the county that don't just work specifically in Douro-Dummer. So when they come to Douro-Dummer, and this has been a complaint from the contractors to me, when they come to Douro-Dummer, they want to go to, they'd like it all to be lined up, and all of a sudden, oh, geez, we find out it's not 3 meters here, it's 15. And that's unacceptable to me. I believe that's totally unacceptable, and we need to, either we take it out of the zoning bylaw as a structure, or we change it that it's a 3 meter setback. I don't know what's the best way there, but I believe that that's what needs to happen. So I leave that to the rest of my colleagues, but I would like to make a motion that we actually do not call it a structure, and that the setback is 3 meters the way it was. That's my recommendation, or what I'd like to make as a motion.
Okay. So I don't see any other comments at this point in time, so we'll take that as a motion to remove, I just want to make sure I'm clear on the language here, remove the allocation of the septic systems as being a structure and the and revert back to a 3 meter setback. Is that what you're looking to do?
Yes,
okay, thank you. Okay. Is anyone wanting to second that motion? Councillor Watt.
Comments, please.
Go ahead.
Don, a question to you. You just said there a few minutes ago that we haven't had any specific requests for, I don't know how you put it, like relief or change or to question the stuff like that. But and I'm guessing there is, and you said something, we'd have to apply for rezoning, or is that how, or how would you answer my question first, how would you alleviate if they didn't have that frontage and that's the only place on the lot that they could put it because of the well situation? How does that go about, if it stays at 15 meters, how does that stay about getting relief from that?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Watt, in that scenario specifically, would probably be a minor variance to allow reduction in the front in that setback. This is something that may come up on a new lot of record, very unlikely on an existing lot of record. Or I should say waterfront lot of record. There is provisions for us where we have septics within the 15 meters to a property line abutting a road when it's the only spot due to public safety that it can go. That's typically within a water yard. Most ones on 1 acre lots are just non-water lots. We don't see it as an issue, or typically they're looking for relief for other items as well. So expanded lot coverage or side yard setback reduction for the principal dwelling, whatever it may be. So I just want to be clear, my comment was that it's not specifically for the septic that we're seeing it. It's been required. They're in front of us for planning because it's required for multiple things in that project, and the septic gets included in it. So I'm not suggesting we don't see the septic captured in there, but they're already coming forward for other things.
All right, that's fair. And why I'm asking that question is because, and again, it's not a comment made. Every time you turn around, it's another layer, it's another cost. Where before, when it was a 3 meters, you may have never had that particular instance because that was just the rules. I don't know that, from what I understand, that probably changed within the last 5 years with our township. I don't know that for a fact, but whatever, let's just say within the last 5 years. But now, if there's a minor variance or a rezoning, or it all comes with a cost, so it's another cost to the people on top of everything they got. And I personally would like to alleviate as much cost to the people as possible, like unnecessary cost. I know there's cost there, but unnecessary cost, so that's kind of where I am on where we go with this.
If I may, through you, Madam Mayor, Councilor Rowe, I agree, we want that as well. And if we saw that as the issue, then like that's why we, like when it comes to 328 and the second dwellings, these are the things that we're seeing people having to do, and we want to alleviate that cost as well. I agree. I'm not against the change, and I only make the recommendation of just the work that we put into is we're looking at the volume of people that we see that are affected by this. And that's why, like, for us, 328 is taking that precedence at that time. And just the 3 meters, I appreciate. I don't know if my report spoke to it, but I would like to at least bring up the idea to council. I think I owe you the service of this is when it comes to road widening, we capture a 3 meter road allowance. And I would caution that we should be thinking about what that would look like if we have a severance that takes place there, or if we have to do road work. If the septic is on in that section of land, if we have to do work, we affect it, we have to pay for that, or if we capture it. MTO sets the septics back the same as buildings for that reason too. And I just want to make sure that I was clear in my report, that I do think that some consideration it can be given to the fact that 3 meters may need to be looked at as well. And
my last question, let's say, I'll use my house as hypothetical. Let's say my septic is there and it's been there for years, if I got, but now if with the septic reinspection and my septic system has to be replaced, I don't have that kind of setback. Can I replace it exactly where it is, or with no extra bells and whistles, or do I have to get a minor variance because now it's not going to conform to what it was, before it's within that 15 meter now instead of the 3.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councilor Watt, specific to the question that you've asked is yes, you'd be able to replace it where it is. And that's even the case of doing a renovation that causes for further expansion. So we allow that. If it's already existing there, then we do that. We do. I don't want to get into specifics of all the different properties, but we have another existing system that had a failure. And we look at the idea, it's within that 15 meters of abutting a road. It was permitted there. We left it there, even though there was place on the property for it to go. So even though that could happen, but the cost of the homeowner would have been to put in a pumping station and alarm and stuff. And we said, this was approved at where it is. The health and safety of the public isn't really affected at this stage, or isn't affected, sorry, not really, it is not affected at this stage. It still met the setbacks under the code. And so we allowed that to happen. And that's what the zoning bylaw allows us to do right now, is on these existing septics that are there, they allow them to still be there. And so we don't foresee that we're going to be forcing people. It's typically a new construction.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nelson, speaking to the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Don, in response actually to the 3 meter setback, and so when a severance is taken off and there's a new lot created, pretty much it's mandatory, or that the 3 meter setback is actually taken from the severance. So now on any property that the township or that we're allowing the severance to happen, or the county and the township that we're allowing that to happen, now we're back to 20 feet from the original property line at the 3 meters. It's now 6 meters, basically, is what it is. They're roughly 20 feet. I can tell you from building roads all my life, not many township roads are ever going to exceed that 10 meters. That's why we asked for that 10 meters to be allowed for us to future widening of any road. So now we're sitting there with a septic bed on a new severance, 20 feet now, that is actually further from the property line. I use 20 feet, 6 meters, which in essence is that much further back from our roads. So I don't buy that justification for severances, that we need more, we need to put it 15 meters. It's uncalled for, I believe. But I just believe that is excessive.
Okay, so we have,
Thank you.
Appreciate that, Deputy Mayor. I think, again, my comment on just is, the code though minimum is 3 meters. It can get up to 6 meters on a full basis. And so my thought was more that if the property line has to move, that 3 meters then isn't enough. And so having them back, and it's just about, I'm just trying to look to the future. I'm not, I'm just making you aware, and that's it. I'm not advocating for one or the other on the setback, and that's not my position today. Just making you aware.
thank you very much. Is there anyone else speaking to the motion?
Well,
Councillor
I'll speak
Johnston.
to the motion. Now, your recommendation is basically to classify the septic as a structure. Is that what the basic recommendation is right now?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Johnson, a septic is a structure under the building code and under our current bylaw. My recommendation is that if the township wishes to look to amend the bylaw to offer relief from potentially the road setback of 15 meters, my recommendation was just that we look at that at the time when the new zoning bylaw is completed, just to save on staff time and allow us to continue to move forward with some of the projects that we already have in the works. That's my recommendation. I'm not, no stake in the game on what it is.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Johnston, did you have any further questions?
I did, but I'll use it. Do we know when we're looking at the zoning bylaw update? Like, is it,
Through you, Madam Mayor, we are awaiting the OP approval, so our hands are tied a little bit. We have been putting money aside. We are prepared to move forward, and I would have liked to have seen it happen already, but we're a little uncertain with the OP. Just while I have the opportunity, before we pass the motion, if we get to that point, can we just get clarification on it? I just want to ask Dawn just to make a comment if you don't mind, but I can wait until the conversation is done.
Oh, certainly. Thank you. Councillor Vervoort.
Thank you, Mayor Watson. As I said earlier, thank you to the folks who came here tonight to speak. A recurring theme was the building department getting out and doing work and looking after folks. Totally agree with that, highly important. Therefore, I think it is a horrible idea to jump into doing something like this now, only to have us revisit it later, potentially, and rework it again. So I'm fully supportive of the recommendation as presented by the building department, because it allows us to get this right the first time rather than reworking things.
Thank you.
Free time to go out on the road and look after taxpayers.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Vervoort. Councillor Watt for the second time.
One last comment, if I may, please, and just and the thing that kind of gets me in this is not having consistency across the county. If all other 7 municipalities have 3, why are we at 15? Like it is very confusing to any contractor. So again, I really think we should have some kind of consistency across the county.
Thank you, Councillor Watt, and I'm glad you raised that. I'll take a moment to speak to the motion as well. I don't. I'm looking at the report, and I don't see any reference in your report, Dawn, about like any research done in the other municipalities. And you know, not to disrespect Deputy Mayor Nelson saying everywhere else in the township is 3 meters. Do we know that beyond that comment? Has there been any work done in that? Mr. Helleman, to confirm what that is at all?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have, so as I think as council's aware, Peterborough Public Health has got out of the septic program and it's being downloaded in the municipalities. And currently at this time, I have reached out to them. There is no firm decision on how they are going to enforce. The people that I've discussed with are definitely of the opinion that septics are structures. That is a guarantee. They're all building code practitioners. They all understand what the act and the code say. It's just about reworking their bylaw, and they haven't come to that yet, and to know where they're gonna stand and what they're going to do. So for instance, we did reach out to, so when we look at how we define them as the structure, and I know right now we're talking about the roadway, but we also have the 30-meter water yard. And that's something that we've heard the same, I'm gonna say argument, which is it was never done. It was always 15 meters. But even the official plan specifically speaks to septic should not be allowed within that 30 meters. We do that as well. Dysart AL also enforces that way. There are other municipalities who look at it as the water yard. And I just think at this current time, we're unclear what the bordering municipalities for us within the county, how they're going to enforce it with setbacks, not only in the water yard, but their road. And that is something that we will continue to monitor. And we do attend meetings monthly to try to make sure that we enforce similarly. We all have different needs and our constituents have different needs as well. So we want to be mindful to that, but we do try to make it as easy on the contractors as possible.
Thank you. So I'll just follow up, and Deputy Mayor Nelson, I see your hands up. So I'll throw the floor to you in a moment, but you know, based on making a change and the motion, which I know we need to seek a little bit of clarity on, I'm at this point, I feel like, although the intention is good, I feel like we're a little ahead of ourselves. And at this point, I don't think I can support making a change simply because we are going to be on the cusp of going through our zoning bylaw and we don't know what that consistency is. So it makes sense just to slow down and wait a little bit so that we can make that decision thoughtfully and strategically in alignment with our other municipalities. Deputy Mayor Nelson, for the second time on the motion.
Yeah, one last comment or a few comments, Mayor Watson. Before the Dysart is actually not in our county for one thing. The county of Peterborough was looked after all by Peterborough Health Unit, or most of them, as far into my knowledge. I know for a fact that has been their setback. Since 1980, when I worked for Drain Brothers and installed 120 septic systems in this township, I know what the setbacks were, and they were 3 meters. They've been that way forever. It wasn't until our department at this township took over, our building department took over, that it got put into the zoning bylaw. And that's where the difference is. And a lot of the other townships were still being looked after by Peterborough City Health Unit. I even had a conversation with one of the inspectors. She come and inspected I remember the day she started and inspected one of our beds. And she is still the city health unit inspector. She thinks it's ridiculous that we have a 15-meter setback. And when every other, she knows the job. And that was my conversation with her. And I can tell you, it's ludicrous that we're not the same as every other municipality in the county. And 3 meters is more than enough of a setback. And it's only been since it went into our zoning bylaw. I stand to be corrected, Don, but I believe that it's only been since our building department has took over that it's been put into our zoning bylaw, because it never ever used to be in our zoning bylaw, I don't believe. I stand to be corrected because Peterborough City Health Unit was looking after it. So it wasn't in our zoning bylaw to actually look after them septic beds. So the frustration from the people that I have been talking to is contractors, and yes, it's coming up, and maybe they're not complaining much to Don, but if this doesn't get passed, I can tell you there's certainly going to be complaining, and it's going to come to all of us, council. That's why I brought this forward. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you very much. Any other comments on the motion before we look to just get some clarity on the motion for staff? Okay, Ms. Arthurs, please, the floor is yours.
My concern, and perhaps the clerk can just reread it, but my concern is the ask to not define them as structures. I understand the intent, I just want to make sure in speaking with our CBO, because they are defined as structures in the code, that that is the proper way to proceed should this motion go through. So if Don can, maybe you can just read the motion, if Don can just provide clarity that that is going to work, just to make sure that we get the wording accurate. Potentially, it still has to be a structure, but the setback actually changes. Not sure, but I would ask Don to clarify that for us.
Thank you. So starting with reading the motion, Martina?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion moved by Deputy Mayor Nelson and seconded by Councillor Watt, that the setback for septic systems be reduced to 3 meters and that septic systems not be referred to as structures in the zoning. And that last part I've ad-libbed because I needed more direction, so this is perfect.
You're looking for my, on the motion? Okay, through you, Madam Mayor, I believe that it's much the same as pickleball courts, tennis courts that we pulled out of the zoning bylaw. I know under, technically, yes, any engineer is gonna call it a structure. I know that technically, but they also call pickleball courts and tennis courts a structure as well. And I disagree with it being called a structure. I can go and, technically, I can go and I can take one run off of a septic bed and maybe move it on to the end and change that structure. I can't change that about a building or footings or stuff like that. I can certainly change a small component of any septic system to conform in most cases, but I certainly can't do that with a building.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Okay, so Mr. Hellman, is that is that possible just in terms of the definition of a structure? It looks like we're just looking for some clarification.
And thank you, Madam Mayor. Just having a minute to think on that. I don't think that there's an issue for that within the zoning bylaw to remove them as a structure. We can't affect that with the code, but the zoning bylaw can use them as not a structure. I guess to do. Again, are we only looking for the septic at the property line abutting the road, or are we looking at the entirety of setbacks? Just because I think they've asked for a 3 meter setback to the property lines. I just think it to property lines, so all lines.
That's what I was going to ask for direction on.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure that I can give you the right information.
Deputy Mayor Nelson?
Sorry. Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe it was the setback was a 1.5 meter from any side yard, right? Is what you are actually, is that what it actually is for a side yard or a backyard?
Through Madam Mayor, no. Sorry, I don't have the bylaw right in front of me, but I believe rear yards, I think rear yard and side yards are 3.1 meters within the zoning bylaw, which is close to the code provision, which is a 3 meter minimum. But it's the extended of the 15 meters to a property line abutting a private lane or a road. And that's what I'm just clarifying, is that is it the change in the 15 meters, or is it throughout the whole bylaw, we want to take it as a structure?
Deputy Mayor?
Well, my ultimate goal is to have it away from 3 meters from the road. That's my ultimate goal.
Mr. Hellman?
Madam Mayor, yes. And thank you. That was the clarification. I just, I think all the other property lines are, like, all the other stuff's fine if it's just the road.
Yes.
As far as the zoning bylaw goes, as far as a minimum, that would put it in line with the code. To be clear, just again, it's that we still have other provisions that would mandate that, as we've talked, Deputy Mayor, hydro, stuff like that would still potentially force them further back. That's all code mandated, not bylaw mandated.
Okay, staff, do you have the clarification that you need at this point in time on the motion? I'm looking at the clerk and our CAO and CBO.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm happy. I believe that we're just trying to amend, if this passes, is the 15 meters.
The 15 meters from the road, not the water yard or side yard or otherwise. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If it is suitable to the mover and the seconder, I'm going to insert the words that the setback from public and private roads for septic systems be reduced to 3 meters to add clarity to the motion, if that is suitable to the mover and the seconder.
Deputy Mayor Nelson, Councillor Watt, are you comfortable with that?
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Lower setback for just that.
Okay. Okay, so we've talked about this good, and I think we're at a point where we're going to call the vote. We're all clear on the motion, so all in favor. And that motion carries. Thank you very much. Oh, Ms. Arthurs.
Thank you, Mayor Watson. Can I just add one thing to that and ensure the council is okay? Given the priorities currently that are happening within the building department, I would ask for just some grace as to when this actually gets started and give staff an opportunity to have maybe a little bit of a lull before they move forward with this one, as long as there is any immediate urgency. Okay, we will place it on the report and capital project status. We'll set it out a little bit to give, once we've talked to the planning and building department to determine what's reasonable, and you'll see it there in the next meeting.
That's fair, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, forgive me because I am in a different time zone, literally in this moment in time. Are we at a point where we need to extend the hour?
No, Madam Mayor, through you, the time here is 6:38, so we can continue on.
Okay, and what time are we watching for here to need to extend the hour? It's 7, because we started at 4 p.m.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, the bylaw speaks to the extension happening after 7 o'clock, then we need to start considering the time. So we still have some flexibility. I think we can go till 8 with an extension. But I'll confirm that and get back to you.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was a set time or if it was a duration.
No, set time.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that clarification. Okay, moving on, we're on to item 10.3, our purchasing report, and we have our interim treasurer, Mr. Creamer. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. To me, there's, in summary, there's 2 components to this report. The first is to award purchase of a new plow truck to Winslow Giraldi Motors Limited in the amount of $373,019. So we did issue a tender for the supply and delivery of the plow truck. I do want to note that this purchase after applicable taxes, and then an estimated trade-in of $20,000. This purchase pretty much comes right in within the approved budget of $360,000. It's also important to note that this truck is projected to be received in September 2025. So this is a reflection of still the impact of the supply chain and some of the difficulty that vendors are still having to fulfill orders. And so with that said, the second part of this report is requesting council to approve a purchase of a second plow truck from the same vendor. In the RFP, we only had 1 response. So it's not like if we go back out, we're getting a lot of responses here. So they're willing to commit to a price. This would be a 2026 model, and we would receive it in January 2026. So this would give us the 2025 and 2026 budget to fund this, the purchase of this vehicle, or the truck. The only other thing I do want to note is, so our trucks, when we buy them, we do plan for a 10-year useful life. So the first truck that we're replacing was purchased in 2010. And so the fact that we're replacing it in 2025 means that we will have extended the useful life about 4 or 5 years. And then it'll be similar for the next truck because we purchased a subsequent truck in 2011. And so the useful life of that truck will be ultimately, if we go through with this timeline, still a 14-15 year replacement schedule. And so, you know, as staff's concern would be if we don't order now, you know, we're only delaying further from January 2026.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Council, questions, comments, motions? Councillor Watt?
Yes, thank you, too, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Paul. And we know with roads, trucks, fire trucks, everything, I mean, the timeline of getting them is getting longer and longer. We can't sit on it. So I totally agree with the recommendation, and I believe that we should, I'll make a recommendation or a motion that we go ahead and purchase both, or put the wheels in motion to purchase both trucks and have them here when we need them.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Vervoort, are you seconding that motion for discussion?
I would like to second that, please.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, Harold, I want to ask you a question. Like, we put down on paper that they should last 10 years. We just heard that for now 14, going on 15 years. Is there, in some cases, some trucks not used as much as others? Like, is it a real necessity because of repairs and everything that they replace that often?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Ray, exactly. We have it on a replacement schedule, and Paul can.
Well, I know that.
We have it on a replacement schedule.
I know.
So normally, and I believe this is still happening, or from what I understand it is, that truck goes in, the oldest truck, when we get a new truck, goes in as a spare. So that we have a spare truck when a truck breaks down. So that old truck becomes a spare. By the time you get 15 years on a truck, there is, and everybody knows that our vehicles don't last like they used to, and they're not as made as good, and so by the time we're looking at getting that spare and get a replacement, yeah, we're looking at like printing 15 years that truck's been in service, and I think maybe just because we haven't been able to get trucks, most times we're trying to keep it, within that time frame, but it's hard to get trucks.
I appreciate that. Okay.
Hope that helps.
Okay. Just any staff clarification on that first before I call on Councillor Watt? In terms of the, Councillor Johnson referenced in terms of budget for replacement. So I was turning it over back to our treasurer, Mr. Creamer. Was there anything else you wanted to add on that?
To you, Madam Mayor, I think the comments that Deputy Mayor Nelson made are definitely correct in terms of the need for the replacement. I do know just every budget the last few years in terms of when I get around to speaking with our public works manager, he's been kind to push back and to delay some of these projects that he was able to deem not 100% necessary based on the condition of the truck. And so I would say every year we're looking at that, but they've been able to push back both trucks more than what we would typically expect, and be able to do the regular maintenance and do the upkeep. But it is now in a position where it is definitely recommended to be replaced.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Watt?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And further to Councillor Johnson's question and Deputy Mayor's responses that we got, since I've been on council, I remember, and Deputy Mayor's gonna have to help me with the name, I think the trucks, was it Starling or Sterling? And within 8 to 10 years, you couldn't get a lot of the parts, but we had a breakdown on, and we couldn't, the parts were obsolete already in that time frame. So we're kind of obligated to keep an eye on that and keep our process. We're lucky to get 14, 15 years because that's kind of unknown. Like, if you have a breakdown, we probably can't get parts on these trucks. So replacing them is although it's expensive, it's a lot of money. It's definitely a thing that needs to be done.
Fair enough. Okay, well, we do already have a motion on the floor. So if there are no other comments, yeah, it's been moved. We're good. If there's no other comments or questions on the motion, we'll just call for the vote. All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to confirm, I've checked the procedural bylaw and we are able to hold the meeting till 7:30, at which time council would need to pass a resolution to waive that section of the procedural bylaw to continue till 8 o'clock.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. I appreciate you looking that up for me. I will keep an eye on that, but also please nudge me if I don't notice if we go in that far. Okay, so moving on to committee minutes and other reports. We have 2 sets of minutes before us this evening. Police Services Board meeting minutes and our Library Board meeting minutes. Motion to receive those. Councillor Johnston, Councillor Vervoort, all in favor? And that carries. Thank you. On to correspondence items. We have item 12.1, Town of Aurora. What would council like to do with this? Councillor Vervoort?
I would, through Mayor Watson, I would like to receive and support.
Okay. And is there anyone wanting to second that? Councillor Watt, any discussion on the motion? All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. Item 12.2, the Township of Amaranth on operational budget funding. Councillor Vervoort?
Through Mayor Watson, I'd like to a motion to receive and support.
All right, will someone second that? Deputy Mayor Nelson, any discussion to the motion? All in favor? And that too carries. And lastly, under correspondence, we have County of Peterborough resolution regarding the concern with closure of the Peterborough lab. What would council like to do with this? Councillor Watt, then Deputy Mayor Nelson.
Receive and support, please.
Deputy Mayor, you're supporting that?
I'll second
Okay.
that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? And that too carries. Thank you. Okay, on to section 13, our bylaws. Of course, we've already addressed 2 of those. We just have item 13.1, which is a bylaw to appoint an acting chief administrative officer. Councillor Vervoort. Oh, sorry. Councillor Johnston, you're making a motion?
Yeah, make a motion.
I'm all second.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Thanks.
And that motion carries. Thank you very much. We have nothing under section 14. Are there any notices of motion? Nothing has come forward thus far, but council? Seeing nothing. Under announcements, I'll kick it off. Certainly on the heels of appointing our acting CAO as in place. Of course, this is our last meeting with our current CAO as council, Alana, who will be leaving us at the end of the month to go to Brighton. I just wanted to take a moment with council to thank you for the last 3 years that you've worked with us. It's been an honor and pleasure to work with you and your leadership, and staff have appreciated your work, and we certainly have, or I personally, I'm sure council will want to add something. I personally have enjoyed your leadership in working with you. So certainly we will miss you, and congratulations on your new role.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Deputy Mayor Nelson?
And through you, Madam Mayor, I just want to echo the same sentiments. Thank you and wish you all the best in future endeavors, and don't forget us here in Douro-Dummer.
Absolutely not.
Thank you very much. Councillor Watt?
I echo everything that's been said and more. Thank you very much. Thank you, Martina, for stepping up to the plate and helping us out here. And good luck with everything. And yeah, we're gonna miss you.
Thank you.
Well,
I'm going down the bench. Councillor Johnston, go for it.
I want to echo the same. Thank you and thank Martina for stepping up and putting this together.
Thank you. Through Madam Mayor, some of you I've had for half a term and then into the second term, and some new, but it's been a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. I promise you I'm leaving you with great staff, and Martina obviously is not foreign to the role, so you will have a smooth transition, and I know we're well underway with the ad out there already, so I'm sure that you'll have somebody in the seat. I appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, still under announcements, just one more note that I had. We have our upcoming Easter egg hunt that's happening at the Douro Park, sponsored by the Recreation Department on March 30th at 11 o'clock. Of course, all are welcome to the wonderful family event. Any other announcements from council who are whispering to each other? Councillor Johnston.
Yeah, I just wanted to make everybody aware that this year, again, the Lions is having their beef dinner Saturday, April, let me see, it is May, sorry, May the 4th on Saturday night at the hall here. So we expect all council and any other people in the municipality, they would show up and come and support the Lions. It's one big fundraiser they have for the year.
Wonderful, thank you. So that's on May the 4th, be with you. Sorry, my Star Wars nerds. Any other announcements from council? Seeing nothing, then we're just going to be looking for a motion to go into closed session for the items that are noted on your agenda. Councillor Vervoort is making that motion. I think I saw Deputy Mayor Nelson's hand to second that. All in favor? That motion carries. And we'll just wait for our clerk to transition us into closed session.
Good night.